Obviously, we've seen attempts for people to set up kind of alternative, more anti-establishment parties in recent years. Most recently, Independent Ireland with a collection of rural independent TDs, and some people are more serious and some people are less serious when it comes to these things. Do you feel like there is a need for an alternative? Do you think that there is a section of the electorate who are not being adequately represented by the menu of offers that are currently available in Irish politics?
I do feel that, and I think that if you put Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael together, and then you ask yourself, are they going to govern by themselves? I don't think they are going to have the support that would enable them to do that. And then the question is, with whose cooperation are they going to govern? And it could be with some of the left-wing parties, Labour, the Social Democrats or the like, or those people who are in the centre or centre-right in Irish politics would, I think, be entitled to somehow make a meaningful choice in the next election to say that this is the general direction that we want Irish politics to take. We don't want it to go left-wing. We don't want a left-wing party wagging the tail of government. And, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have, to some extent, been driven by the Greens agenda. I'm not talking about the environment, other issues up to now. And I think, the two referendums show what happens when you have those two parties being manoeuvred into positions which are contrary to their own instincts.
If such a centre-right party was to go into coalition with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or both after the next election, what advice would you give to them, given your background with the PDs and your experience in politics and everything you've seen? Is there anything that you would recommend that such a party would avoid, or?
Well, if you were going to form some grouping, whether it be a party or not, because there are huge difficulties in establishing parties nowadays. But if you're going to establish such a grouping, I think that you'd want to be clear that you weren't just aspiring to be the mudguard on a Fianna Fáil Fine Gael coalition, that your aim was to seriously determine the direction of the next government, because people, I think, will want change, and they'll want the change to be fairly decisive. And therefore I don't think that the notion which most political correspondents think of a group of independents on a random basis propping up a government is an acceptable one. I think it has to be much more coherent than that, and an agenda shared between those people who aspire to be in government, which the people can understand.
We've seen Eamon Ryan step back from politics now, and love him or hate him, it's undoubtedly the case that he had a massively disproportionate impact on the current government coalition, and is probably one of the most effective politicians we've seen in modern Ireland. Whether that's for better or for worse is based on person's personal opinion, but he's clearly very good at getting his agenda over the line. Do you think that such a party should be going for Green Party levels of influence, whether those policies are pursued being a totally other question?
Well, there's not much point in seeking to be in a position to influence government unless you have an agenda. And Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, they are centre parties. Fianna Fáil would claim to be centre-left. I don't really see that among their supporters. But what I think is important, Eamon Ryan did persuade the government parties to adopt his climate bill, which will never be achieved. He engaged in a lot of aspirational politics, which were incapable of delivery, and he stopped a lot of things from happening. The circular road in Galway, various motorway and other infrastructural things from happening, while talking vaguely about railways as being the solution. We know what's going to happen in Ireland. If present policies go ahead, 20 billion will be spent on an underground from Malahide to Dartmouth Square, and Dublin will not have a Lewis system, and that's a choice that Eamon Ryan made.
So I suppose then when it comes to having a cohesive plan and strategy in place, one of the things that some commentators have pointed to is an apparent lack of leadership, which is no disrespect to anybody involved, but it seems like there's a lot of anti-establishment discontent out there, and there's a lot of people who want to get active and want to do something, but they don't feel like there's anybody with sufficient gravitas or sufficiently detailed picture of the world to actually spearhead such a movement. And I've even heard people bring up your name in such a context as a potential individual, particularly after the referendum and the role that you played in that. Is that something that you would consider in any circumstance?
Well, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, I'm very strongly of the view that if the independents and the kind of people who vote for them want a voice in the next government, they will have to be coherent. And is there some form of a disconnect between being coherent and being independent? I don't think so. In Leinster House behind me, we have the most savage party whip system that is present in any European Parliament. In England you can vote against the government and you're not automatically deselected at the next election. In Ireland we don't have that. You're expelled from the party instantly. The government has, for instance, 40 out of the 60 senators, and they've largely converted the Senate this time round, as opposed to the last time round when the government was in a minority, into a rubber stamp. And they're rubber stamping a lot of matters through the Parliament at this stage. And I think people would have more respect for a grouping which said, on many, many issues, our members will be free to vote in accordance with their own views. I mean, I don't see why every issue has to be a matter of confidence in the government.
So specifically then on the matter of leadership, as I say, is it? Would you hypothetically be open to speaking to other TDs, other senators and legislators about forming some kind of a grouping or joining an existing grouping that's coalescing at the minute?
Well, I don't think it's a matter for me to take the lead, and I don't intend taking any lead in such discussions. Independent TDs have their own minds and their own agendas, but I'm always willing, from wherever I am, be it in the Senate or in the Dáil or in neither, to assist in any way to ensure that Ireland goes in the right direction. And I think that at the next election there is a very significant opportunity there for people who do want change, don't want a left-wing dog's tail wagging the government, and I think that opportunity will come to the fore. You see, the government at the moment is pretending that they're going to have no general election until February of 2025. I don't believe that. I think that that's being done simply to keep the Greens on side, to stop anybody jumping into the lifeboats too quickly on this government, and also to keep Sinn Féin guessing. But I think it's much more likely that in the autumn of this year, after the budget, there will be a general election, and I think that it would be a mistake to think that the results of the local and European elections will be mirrored mathematically in the same way in such a general election.